You're listening to the Bible Belt Bros podcast with my dad and his dumb friend. Enjoy.
We got William with Harper's Hut with us today.
He's back,
He's back.
but he didn't bring any free coffee. So
What? No, instead he's drinking my coffee. My subpar coffee.
It's not bad.
William has challenged us to read a C.S. Lewis quote or just a passage from one of his books. And then Dusty and I have about 5 minutes to expand upon it as to what we think it means. That is what we're going to do.
Andrew, have you ever read a C.S. Lewis book?
I don't think so.
Me neither. I've heard of C.S. Lewis.
Do I need a... First off, William, do I need a dictionary ready?
Not on this one.
Okay, that's good. I have seen some of his quotes in which it's required.
Yeah, no doubt.
Here we go.
Okay, I'm trying to pick a quote here that applies to today's lesson. So here we go. This is from C.S. Lewis, and I'll read it twice.
Thank you.
The task of the modern educator is not to cut down jungles, but to irrigate deserts. I'll read it one more time. The task of the modern educator is not to cut down jungles, but to irrigate deserts.
All right, Dusty, so how we're going to approach this. We're taking an educated approach. We're going to break down the sentence, okay? So,
The jungles are the 1%.
okay, it's
That's
actually...
Bernie Sanders.
Timer, hold on.
All right, he has set a 5-minute timer. All right, so we're going to break this down in an educated way, Dusty, since we were talking about education. So we're going to break down the sentence. So the task of the... Was it educate? Modern educator. So a teacher or a...
The task is what you're supposed to do.
Correct.
That is an article.
Modern is today.
Educator being teacher or mentor. All right, so jungle. What is jungle, Dusty?
I would say the jungle is... I don't know.
We're not trying to tear down jungles. So we're not clear cutting. We're not lumberjacks.
We're not trying to tear down the jungle's people who have maybe reached potential in their lives. You know, like
Okay, I could see that.
Tall trees.
Yeah, because in jungles you got tall trees, right?
Yeah. So it's really, smart and
This is
successful.
This is okay. I see that.
The 1%.
Okay, Bernie Sanders. Okay. But to
1 minute's up.
Oh my gosh!
that's only been 1 minute.
Yeah.
Man, it feels like an eternity.
I thought you were gonna say 1 minute left.
I'm going to read it again for you because you might be stuck on the. The task of the modern educator is not to cut down jungles, but to irrigate deserts. Think about it. You guys want some help?
I grew up in Iowa. There's
No.
irrigation in Iowa,
Oh my! And we know that's not the Bible Belt.
and deserts are not tall.
So we got irrigate the desert. So
I lived in Arizona 1 year of my life, and there was the deserts. This is very personal to me.
we don't know where Dusty's going with this.
You're on to something.
I'm just letting you know this is a very personal in my life. I mean, I've experienced irrigation and I've experienced deserts.
2 minutes is up.
Have you experienced jungles?
I have not.
What I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to read the quote again.
Read it backwards. That might make more sense. Like
Oh, there we
Deserts irrigate to butt. Jungles down cut to not is educator, modern, the of task the.
dude, that totally.
go. That cleared it up.
cleared
Okay,
it up.
so what he is saying here. All right, so not to cut down jungles, but to irrigate deserts. So to teach and to grow new Christians.
He's just blanketly talking educator,
Yeah.
not
Oh.
Christian.
Why are you
just-
making
Okay.
this spiritual?
Okay.
Yeah,
Because it's C.S. Lewis.
it's true. Yeah.
Okay. So, educate the few, not the many, maybe? Or not, not bring down those who are educated.
3 minutes is up. I feel like we're actually getting nowhere.
What I'm with you. So you got the people that know things.
Right, you got the smart
Education.
and
We're
you got
not
the know-it-alls.
We're not dumbing down education to bring the smart down, but we're using education to bring
the dumb
those with
up.
no knowledge. People like me can become
Right. So we're
True.
not making me stupider. We're just making Dusty smarter.
Okay. You guys are onto some cool stuff that I wasn't thinking.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's not even anywhere where I was thinking, but because that's a new quote to me as well. Okay, so 5 minutes. That's just gonna be way too awkward.
Right. So go ahead.
So this is what I was thinking. He was saying because this is the first time I've heard it as well. The task of the modern educator is not to cut down jungles, but to irrigate deserts. You were thinking as some people have knowledge and are jungles, some other people are deserts. I was thinking within one's mind, one person can have jungles and deserts at the same time.
It's true.
Well, why would we worry about area that is flourishing? If there are jungles there, they're either doing things, they're getting the knowledge, they're doing them themselves. Let's worry about the areas that there's no water, there's no vegetation, there's no growth. So as an educator, let's plant seeds in this area that there's unplanted versus going into a jungle where there's already flourishing
So what
knowledge.
you're saying is instead of excelling in one area, be mediocre in all areas,
No.
according to that. Because
No,
if you're
no.
a
That's
jungle
the
in
role of
one,
an educator. The role of an educator, not a person.
so an educator is meant to make you mediocre in all areas rather than
a jungle's
flourish.
not mediocre.
A jungle's not, but if you are trying to maybe irrigate that desert, you're making that flourishing jungle lack.
If I add more to the jungle, wouldn't I be destroying the current vegetation, affecting the already flora and fauna, and messing with that ecosystem?
Negative.
If I already have a flourishing forest,
If you're watering the forest, you're just allowing it to
But
grow
it's to-
more and expand more.
sure, you can say cut down those trees, but if you've got a knowledge, and you've got, okay, so we're building a brick wall, and there are holes in the brick wall. Should we build higher, which I think is his point, or should we fill in those holes? And so that's where I felt like he's going with the quote. Like, you've got a brick wall built, and there are holes in that brick wall. Fill in those holes. Instead of cutting down jungle.
Well, I could see that, but that's just filling in the gaps within that flourishing jungle. That's not
that's
necessarily
on the
irrigating.
plane of your brain, you've got areas where there's vegetation and growth, and you've got areas where there's none. I feel like as an educator, let's plant seed into that area where there is no growth. Let's help these humans to, reach their mental capacity.
Hey guys,
here's
That's
my.
where I thought he was going, and that's just an opinion.
I'm over
Right,
here.
right.
Don't mind me. I'm
Oh, we're not going
6
to.
minutes. 6 minutes.
Okay, so what I'm seeing
After
there.
what I said, how's that change what you're thinking?
Well, I kind of agree. I've heard like I follow like Seth Godin and Donald Miller. And one of the things that one of those guys has really hit on was a lot of times when our kids go to school and they got all A's and 1D, where as parents we're focused on getting that D up instead of figuring out why they're excelling in the A's. What about this subject are they really intrigued with? And so
There are
kind
different
of
philosophies. One is worry about your greatest strengths and stop worrying about your greatest weaknesses. Or the other, there's two philosophies in life. You've got strengths, focus on those and grow those. And don't worry about your weaknesses. And then there's the other philosophy is, hey, those weaknesses, they're going to hold you back. You are always working on them.
yeah. You gotta always
that's
work.
two philosophies, no
You
doubt.
gotta always work on them, but it's not.
I do.
It's nice to figure out what your kid or what you actually like enjoy in life when you're trying to figure out.
So instead of listening to C.S. Lewis, you guys are like, hey, there's the forest. Don't chop down the forest. Let's go plant on the rim of the forest, on the edge of the forest. Let's grow that forest.
I'm not saying
I agree.
plant there. I'm saying water that and keep growing that. Because if you
But
water
it's already
it, you
being
keep
watered.
if
It's
you
a
keep watering
forest.
it, you keep feeding it, but not necessarily because you can starve a forest.
And he's not even talking about. He's saying cut down jungles. He's not. He's saying don't cut down jungles.
Right.
He's not. You know what I mean? Like it's already being fed.
Right.
His thing
Okay, I
is
see.
it
Don't-
cutting down jungles or irrigating deserts?
So don't stop teaching that.
Or don't take away from someone's knowledge or, reduce someone's knowledge base. It's not to not plant there. It's to don't cut it down. He's not saying don't continue planting there like you're saying.
Well, it's not planting. It's just watering.
Or watering or growing it or modifying it,
Right.
iterating it. He's not saying that. He's just saying the role of an educator, it's not to chop those trees, but to plant in unplanted areas.
Well, see, okay, so I excel in science and math, but I suck in accounting. So I'm not going to go study accounting and try and grow in accounting when I'm excelling over here in, say, the science field or biology
Fine.
field.
Let's apply this quote to that situation.
Okay, let's do that.
So you excel in science. You do not excel in accounting. The task of an educator, person that's educating you in
Right, so a
science,
professor or a teacher,
is
instructor.
not to cut down the jungles you have, the biology and the understanding of science and the intertwined disciplines. It's not to cut those jungles down, but to irrigate deserts. So what in science are you terrible at? Chemistry? Biochemistry? What is it that you don't excel at? There's
Science.
a hole in your science.
Okay, so
It's
like
not to
genetics.
like genetics. It's not to chop down jungles that are thriving. You're great at biology. You're great with cells, cultures, all that. It's as an educator, if I was your educator, I would be looking inside of your mind, and I would be irrigating those deserts, growing you. And his point is probably this: will that hold you back one day? That weakness in genetics, strengthening that background in genetics, will it help you one day?
See, I don't see that as because I don't have a desert in genetics. You know, I may be a.
Do you have a forest?
I might be at a forest. Yes, it wouldn't be a jungle. It might be a forest, but it's definitely not a
You got
desert.
a grass yard?
I would say
Jungles
there.
are pretty dangerous.
There we go. We got a grass.
That's better.
We
I got a
some
grass yard.
We got some grass.
Yes, I got some grass. I'm not a desert in that. I am a complete desert, say, when it comes to accounting.
Okay, so irrigate deserts. So no, let's. Okay, so you're saying your desert isn't something that doesn't apply, isn't even close to your profession.
Correct.
I feel like there are deserts within our profession. There are things in business that are deserts for me. You know,
I could see that.
You know, there just are. There's just areas where there are forests and there are areas
Right.
that are deserts. And
And again, going to business, accounting would apply in business.
Wow.
You know, I'm a great salesman, but yet again, I would suck at accounting.
So real life scenario for me, I excelled in PE and choir and study hall, but I did fail Spanish 2. So I should focus on Spanish 2. Is that what you're saying?
educators
Educators.
in your life, when they see those deserts, it is that Spanish 2 teacher. You're already passed. You're kind of screwed. You're kind of like one of those people that will probably never get Spanish. But the role of that educator was to plant in that desert. Unfortunately, they failed you. So sorry.
Well, and so
Apologize for them.
my question is this: could it also? We're focusing on a jungle being a topic, or what if it's a process of learning? Like for me, I'm more of a hands-on person.
I like it.
So I didn't. My desert was book reading.
Yeah,
book reading and
Totally,
learning.
dude. It applies.
Where my
100%.
jungle was hands-on learning. People walking me through a process. I can pick it up.
So what you're saying, the educators, if they had looked through that paradigm, should have spent more time irrigating your book reading skills, your book learning skills, and taught you how to use that so that later in life you could use that technique. Whereas right now in life, you don't know how to use it.
Right.
Whereas those educators, they never fully taught you how to use that field. And it's a desert.
Or I wasn't able to excel in that field because.
And right now it's a desert. That's where I feel like you went with it.
Okay,
I
I
feel like
could
we're all
see.
on the same page.
Yeah, I could see your.
Do we have C.S. Lewis's phone number? We could give him a call real
He's
quick.
actually
Let me just look at my phone.
he's in
book.
heaven. Yeah.
So if we pray right now,
Ouija board would be
Ouija board
probably a little bit.
Ooh, let's get one. Just kidding.
Let's get one and channel in C.S. Lewis.
all right, this is the dark turn. We better just go ahead and get started with the actual podcast.
All right, so the reason we have William on the show today is because we are talking about Christian education. William was an educator himself, and he has failed a few. He has not failed a few.
He has some
Failed a few.
deserts and he has some jungles.
If we're talking about learning styles, I probably did fail a few along the way.
Well, I'm just because not every professor or teacher is perfect. Like I have.
What?
Exactly.
Not
I know,
perfect
right?
in my world.
Just blew your mind, dude.
That's
I know I have one professor who is completely amazing. He fits my learning style perfectly.
I know what you're saying.
Yet you go on ratemyprofessor.com or whatnot,
And he's blasted.
there are people blasting him.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. So, yet,
So it works for 9, but that 1.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right, let's get into this. Christian education, swelling the cranium, Dusty. That's what we're talking about today. And since you didn't read this chapter, Dusty, what do you think Mr. Viola's view on this is? On Christian education, not
Well,
education.
I didn't read this chapter because I didn't think we were talking about this chapter today. I had something else I want to talk about. We'll just save it for a future podcast. But just knowing Frank Viola, he's against education.
Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner.
Is he really?
He is. No, he's against Christian education, not education.
Really?
Christian education because it's been commercialized. It wasn't until, like the 1930s and 40s when we introduced youth pastors and all that, and just commercialized everything and Bible colleges.
Well, and I think it goes along the lines too. We talked about clergy salaries, and the higher educated your pastor is, just like in the business world, the higher paid normally your pastor is.
Right. And real quick, I'm going to get this out there. I don't think you have to have a Christian education in order to be a pastor.
Sure helps.
It might help. It's going to help with some arguments, but I think anybody who studies the Bible, which I guess that you're
But
educating
how would
yourself.
you understand the contextual understanding of like how it applied 2,000 years ago without somebody else helping you and
Well,
you
somebody
standing on
else is
someone's
going because you're
shoulders?
going to have to look at like commentaries and read other books, not because obviously you're not going to
If you're a
understand the
self-starter,
Greek words.
You can do that.
or
If you're a self-educator.
right.
But all you're
Not
doing at
everybody
Christian
is.
college is you're just taking somebody's interpretation and then making that yours.
And
It's not someone's interpretation. It's many someone's interpretation.
many someone's and
Not
many
necessarily. It
different
depends on the college you
interpretations.
go to.
You go to a Baptist
Seminaries
college,
will-
it's going to be different.
Well, I'm not
than-
talking about seminaries. I'm talking about a Bible college, which is just a liberal arts college that focuses, say, on a serving in the Christian world.
They're most likely going to be teaching out of a book that's accepted by many someones.
in that denomination, most likely, because Oral
Or-
Roberts would be different.
Or within that group, such as the Jesus movement, in which those people were out there. They're in colleges, Christian colleges and secular colleges, and they teach that Jesus was not the Son of Man. Or
I
Son
think
of
it's
God.
good to align with somebody like with many someone's. I think it's dangerous to not get a degree regardless of what field you're in. I'm talking about pastors. I'm talking about biologists. I'm talking about businessmen. Do people do it every day and they're successful at it? Absolutely.
Right.
Extremely successful sometimes. But most often those people are very good at getting out and educating themselves. They don't necessarily need a teacher to drag them through a topic. But like for the majority of people, you need to align with someone else's knowledge and be taught by someone.
Which I agree.
Mentor under somebody.
I do agree with that. But as well as far as getting that 4-year, 8-year education from an institution,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think you have to have that in order to be, in the Christian world, or actually even in the secular world. You don't have to align with that. Not trying to blast anybody, but let's take my wife for example. She didn't get a 4-year education or anything, or a master's or anything like that.
What's her bit job?
She's a vice president of a credit union.
There you go, dude.
So
A lot of business people are extremely successful with no 4-year degrees.
exactly. And
So it's out there.
It is, and I know many people who don't have a degree or education necessarily, a traditionalized education. Let's put it that way. Who are making 6 figures. Yet I know a lot of people who
Or
have that
7.
or 7. But I know a lot of people who have that education, masters and PhDs, who can't find a job because they are overqualified.
Started from the
Or-
bottom, now we're here.
It's kind of like herd immunity.
You talked about that last time.
You can't like the herd immunity. With enough people being educated, not everybody has to be, because your wife, who's a vice president, likely she's around people that do have an education, and she's got a mind enough to absorb.
Yes,
a
she did
quick
have.
enough mind. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah,
Herd
she had
immunity
2 great mentors that she.
that were educated.
That were.
Okay.
I know one was educated.
So
for
there
sure.
you go.
I don't
It's
know about
herd
the-
immunity. If you think about it, you've got so many degrees around you right now that your argument doesn't have any basis in a country where there are no degrees. Your wife
True
can
this,
bump
true this.
shoulders with people that have degrees, save herself 4 years. That education, she's getting it from somewhere.
I wouldn't say it saved her 4 years because it's taken her 20 years to get where she's at. Well, okay, it take her about 15 years where she's at. Where, if you have that 4 year, you can almost move directly
Move
into
a little
that position.
quicker. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Not directly into it. I mean, it may take you 2 or 3 years to get to that position, but
She still
So-
had to mentor.
right,
She still
right.
had to mentor. Either way, she would have had to mentor.
Right. Now,
And
don't get
she's
me wrong.
blessed.
I am 100% for education. I'm in college myself. I graduate this semester with my bachelor's, and then I'm either moving on to a master's program or I'm going into PA school. I haven't
Yeah.
decided yet. So
Good.
I'm pro education. But at the same time, you can be very successful without an education.
Mhm.
So I can talk out both sides of my mouth here.
That's not what you're thinking.
Nope.
I was
that is
thinking you were
not.
going to say butt. Two-sided butt?
You don't have a two-sided butt?
Not like that.
Two-sided mouth. I can talk out both sides of my mouth here. So now let's take Dusty here. He started a successful business, and he
It's
doesn't
getting that way.
have a 4-year degree. He doesn't even have a 2-year degree.
I
Wait.
tried online school
Did
stuff.
you finish high school?
Do you have a 1-year degree?
I don't have a 1 year. I don't even know if I have a credit to my name, but I do have $11,000 in debt from student loans.
Oh, I remember that, Dusty.
Uh,
I remember that. That was brutal. Oh, that was a poor decision, bro.
Well, I made some poor decisions when I got divorced, and going to school without
Hey,
was one of them.
no, you got a computer out of the deal.
I have an $11,000 laptop, currently still paying off.
Sorry, dude. That's not funny, but it is.
Well done.
So,
So you're voting for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
free education.
free Yep.
But yeah, so we take Dusty. He has a success. Well, I would say it's a successful business. He is constantly busy.
Well, we are growing. We are hiring. It's not
Right.
like successful, but it is.
I'd say
getting-
it's successful.
It's
How many employees you guys
It
have?
How do you
hasn't-
define success then?
it hasn't reached its success point, I guess. I mean, it's successful as far as it's still growing. It could still fail, so I wouldn't.
You
say
talking successful as in like it doesn't run itself? You can't sit on the beach and fish.
Yes.
I think that's what he's measuring success
Well,
as.
I just
Okay.
mean as far maybe me paying myself an actual salary.
Oh,
I pay my employees more than pay me.
But that's just the life of a business owner,
that's the
bro.
reality. That's the world.
That
It
is. I mean, until you get to that multi-million-dollar stage, it's pretty much what you're gonna be doing, bro.
So until I get successful,
That doesn't measure success. You have a business that
Hey,
is flourishing.
I would say most businesses, the business that moved into because we had to expand to another
Right.
location,
because you're successful.
the business that just moved in there is already gone. So it's been
Wow.
less than a year.
Wow.
And the business that was there before. Well, okay, in one of those buildings wasn't there long.
That's a story of a success. bro.
Okay, so here's
Yeah.
Dusty's success story. Dusty started in this. Okay, actually, Dusty started in my basement.
Yeah.
He outgrew my basement. He moved into a storefront.
I couldn't afford to live in an actual apartment, so I
Right.
rented out a basement, cellar, dungeon place.
Hey, I love that basement. Anyways, he took my man cave and we turned it into an apartment for him.
You're tying this back into Christian education, right?
Yes.
I don't
Well,
really
education.
know.
Okay.
Education in general. I kind of steered away from Christian education because Frank Viola is. We'll talk about it.
So that's why I didn't read the book, Andrew, because you weren't even going to talk about it anyway.
So here's Dusty's success story. He started in my basement. He moved to a storefront. He outgrew that storefront, so he got the location next door to him. He tore down a door, or he had a doorway in between the two businesses. And then he outgrew those two buildings. And so he went into a new storefront, which is over there by your coffee shop. Let's tie this back into Christian education. So Dusty, or education in general.
Yeah.
Dusty is a success story. He has a high school education. But he has mentored, he has listened to podcasts and other things.
YouTube University.
There we go, YouTube
Podcast
University.
of America.
And he has created a great foundation for what his business is. And so, in that sense, he's educated. But,
I learned on the streets. Yeah, I got street knowledge.
however, the Bible doesn't, I mean, who were the guys that walked with Jesus? Were they educated?
Yeah.
A couple of them were.
I mean, think about it.
Not all of them.
Walking with Christ every day.
Well, yeah, they had a mentor.
His mentorship, his knowledge base, his understanding was like completely out of this world.
I agree.
Well, on the day of Pentecost,
okay,
Paul said,
really, it's out of this world.
Like, yeah, like everything was like so backwards.
It was
at that
Jesus. Of
time.
course, it's out of this world.
They're like, let's be fishers of men. Let's go into the church and throw all the tables over. People are, it was just so backwards to that time.
Okay.
Yeah, but Paul was it Paul that said that on the day of Pentecost they were unschooled, ordinary men. So
I don't know if that was Paul, and I'm not going to agree with you. I know what you're.
that's
I know what
whoever
you're
was
talking about.
But they were talking about
Right.
one, we're not drunk because it's 9 a.m. or whatever. I can't remember.
Right. I know what you're talking about, and yes. So, I believe we can. I do agree with yes, a mentor. Everybody I know who has an education, who doesn't have an education, has a mentor of some sort.
Where was Christ as a child? He was in the church. He was studying. He was
Right.
doing all that knowledge seeking early in his life.
Right.
He then turned around and became a mentor.
Making furniture.
No.
He was running. He was running away from his parents in the.
That was
and
one
he was
instance.
studying under
That was one
people.
instance. He wasn't studying. People were studying him. He was the one teaching in the synagogue at that point.
He had to gain that knowledge from earthly means, reading, learning, listening. I don't think that he was born with that knowledge.
He wasn't born with that knowledge. There was who was it? The guy that makes the Numa videos. That's now like Oprah's best friend.
Rob Bell.
Yeah, Rob Bell. He did a thing where he was talking about education back then, and even like the disciples. Like there were steps of memorizing scripture that you had to do.
Right.
And so
I don't think Christ ever memorized.
You don't.
I think he
memorized scripture?
conceptualized. I think he never spent time rote memorizing, and most likely spent time taking it all the way up to the top ladder of the learning pyramid into conceptualization.
But he quoted scripture, so
Exactly.
how would he not
So maybe he
have
did some rote
memorized?
memory if he quoted.
I was going to say he would refer back to and quote scripture. So how would he have not done memorization?
Through conceptualization. It's like the deepest level of learning.
Then he
if
wouldn't
you
have
can build a
quoted.
story around it, yeah, I can quote things all day if I can build it into a story. And I can learn a whole
But isn't an
chapter
exact
of
quote?
information by building it into a storyline and thinking through it so that it makes sense instead of sitting there memorizing one line at a time and not putting it into a paragraph or a chapter or into a book. Instead of learning, that's how modern day school is. Learn these terms.
Right.
And that's like the very bottom level of education. You have to learn terms. You have to learn A, B, C, D, F, G. You have to learn what egg is. You have to learn what cat is. But, like, how long can you do that? Did he do that forever? No. Eventually, after, what you think he did, sat in there and wrote on a chalkboard 1,000 times like Bart Simpson. I will not do this all day. I will not do, what did Bart Simpson used to write on the board?
I will not skateboard through.
I don't think
hallways.
Christ did that. I think that he conceptualized more than he memorized.
I don't think they skateboarded back then, so.
What did they do?
No, but they also didn't have printing presses or anything like that, so they had to memorize if they're going to talk about the Bible or anything. They had to memorize.
He didn't memorize. Everyone has to.
I understand the conceptual part as well, but I believe he went through memorization.
You're not going to get that intelligent, that off the cuff, that so far out of your time. Obviously he's half man, half.
Well, no,
half planetary.
I was watching a video yesterday. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the human calculator. The guy who is literally faster than a calculator at any equation you could give him.
I met someone like that.
He is out of this world.
Is he from Tulsa?
No, he's not. It was on, I don't know, it was on YouTube, and then I just kept watching his videos more and more because he just amazed me. And so they hooked him up to MRIs.
But he didn't memorize 11,900 times 11,900.
He didn't. He is able to visualize those words or those numbers and rearrange them somehow that he can do this. And what they said is when they hooked him up to this machine, that he shuts down most of his brain and uses a part of the brain that nobody else uses to do this.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's what Jesus probably did.
I think he breaks it down into building blocks. Like, when I met someone that could do that, like 11,000 times 365, he could do it right there on the spot. He told me that he breaks it down into the building blocks, 11,000 times 300, then 11,000 times 60, then 11,000 times 7 or 5, and then he adds it back together. In algebra or math, you learn to break it down into parts. And so, maybe Christ did something like that. Maybe he wrote memorized like Bart Simpson did.
Well, I have been taught that was the process for young kids as they grew up, that they would memorize scripture.
He was in his 30s, trust me. He wasn't memorizing in his 20s.
He had already done that. Like he was doing that
I
when he was
agree.
10 and 12.
That's pretty solid memory. Pretty solid brain.
I mean, there's
Well,
song
I
lyrics I
mean-
remember from when I was 10 and 12. There's
This little light of mine.
Anything in
I
a
love you, you love
song,
me.
anything in a song you'll remember.
I won't.
Yeah, you won't. That's true.
I
Most
don't know.
people.
For some reason,
Itsy Bitsy Spider?
I don't know. I know that Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the waterfall,
You know the
down came
melody?
the rain,
Yeah, okay, so
And wash
you know.
water
That's
back.
what we all know.
but that's the only part of it I know. There's more to
Humpty
it.
Out came the sun,
Humpty
baby.
Dumpty?
Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall,
You're proving my point.
had
here,
a great
buddy.
fall.
You're proving
All
my
the
point.
king's men couldn't put them together
Like
again.
I said, you hadn't said that in about 30 years.
Oh no, I've said that. I have a daughter.
Oh,
I've
okay.
taught her that
Okay.
within probably the last 3 years.
Going back to the book, what I think
I haven't said it in 30 years, and I still remember it.
Frank Viola, there was one section talking about Sunday school, and we've had an issue at a church that I was at where, like there's so many people that just want to learn all the time, but they don't actually do anything with that
Very
Mhm.
knowledge.
dangerous.
Right.
Very dangerous.
And so, but then there's also people that just do
Without learning.
without learning.
Oh,
and so,
also dangerous. Also dangerous.
I think it's James chapter 1 it talks about that, but faith without action is dead or whatever. But so there's an issue with what he was having with education as far as we're just trying to consume so much knowledge before we do anything, and then I don't know, just kind of like we just trying to consume and not do anything with
Mm-hmm.
what we're learning.
I once read a book about that where people read 50, 60 books and they never get smarter. They never get rich. And like I once came across an author and he said, the biggest tragedy in this world is an intelligent poor man. A person that is extremely intelligent but has no money. And I thought, man, that is the biggest tragedy in this world. How tragic would it be for you to be extremely intelligent but have no money? And so I look around and I'm like, dude, there's people that are extremely intelligent all over the place. They read nonstop, but what do they not do? They don't apply
put it to
any of it.
practice.
They don't put it in practice. So one thing that I forced myself to do over the years is reread the books I read. So this year, the beginning of the year, I set my goal sheet out on January 1st, and I wrote down all my goals for the year. And one of my goals is not to read a new book this year, to reread books that I've read in the past. Instead of reading 50 books this year like I usually do, I'm going to read the 50 books in my past or the books I've read 50 times previously. And so that, because those nuggets that I've read, I've applied them, but I've missed some. And so I know people firsthand, and I know you guys do, they read nonstop. They're always reading things, and they're just dumb as can be, and they're poor, and so there's no application. So I think, like you said, knowledge without application, it's actually poisonous, and it's very dangerous, and it's useless, and you can be considered useless in that regard. And then, of course, application with no knowledge, how effective are you going to be? Your efficiency isn't anywhere close to what it could have been.
I just wait till those books come out on movie format and I can watch the movie. Just as good as reading a book.
Yes, but Dusty, this book will never come out on
No.
movie.
The books I've read will never be out in a movie.
Maybe those nonfiction books or those fiction books. Yes.
Hunger Games.
Star Wars. Yes, those will. Yes.
Was Star Wars a book first?
I'm going to throw this out there. I think that it's an extremely ignorant thing for Frank Viola to say Christian education is worthless. Or just not.
I don't think he says it's worthless. He just it's corrupted.
Right.
Okay,
It's not what
it
the
is
Bible taught
corrupted.
and all that.
I mean, we teach what? That drinking alcohol is a sin? Like, that's a corrupt.
Well, that's what
a
most
perversion.
religions. Yes.
That's a perversion of the truth. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of things like, our giving tendencies in this country. you're going to have people teach it different ways. It's probably a perversion of the truth. Whatever helps them to pay their bills and keep, at the end of the day, the means is good, helping people to be found or lost people to be found. But I think there's a lot of perversions. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Christian education is so vital. It's so needed.
I would say, yes, Christian education, or I would, in general, say education.
Yeah, just take it right down to the baseline.
We don't want to end up like Stephen Airy on Making Murder. Their family was
I haven't seen it.
not educated.
You said Stephen Airy, and
Damn it. Avery.
Yeah, there you go.
Stephen Airy is a friend of mine. If I keep saying his name wrong, he might end up in
Isn't
jail.
he a teacher?
No, he's like I don't know.
What
Is
do you
his
guys
wife a
think about
teacher?
Christian
Security guard.
education?
His wife's a teacher.
Okay, his wife's a teacher.
What do you guys think about it?
Think about education.
Christian education.
I've told you my view.
I think it's
This entire
important.
podcast.
I mean, to me, like Christian education is just like a fast track of listening to a bunch of sermons and getting your knowledge through your pastor.
What?
Like,
That is the weirdest interpretation ever.
well, because you just learn so much. Like I've taken some classes through Liberty University. I didn't get any credit for them because there was
Because
Yeah.
no. It was a
No,
weird
It
situation.
was a weird thing.
We kind of paid for it, but then they this program didn't like they sent me books and I took tests and I sent in all the tests
Right.
and then they didn't grade them because they couldn't find my.
It was a weird thing.
It was a weird thing.
I did it too.
Anyways, I did a pretty stinking good job, and if I really cared about having the degree part of it, I could just sign up and then all my tests would get graded. But I don't really care about the degree side of having it. The fact that I did it and I gained lots of knowledge with it is.
So what I'm saying is, what I'm hear you saying is you don't place a lot of emphasis on having degrees or formal education.
For me personally, no. Like
Cool.
having a degree in
I like that for you
in
personally.
Bible.
That works out good.
for where I'm at right now in business, me having a degree in biblical history or whatever it was,
What about in business?
it'd be important for me to take some business classes.
Isn't that interesting how your perspective on education changes when it's something that you're like knee deep in?
Yeah. But I can't afford business classes, and I don't have time for business
I
classes.
mean, you're already a
So I
entrepreneur.
I lean on people like you and lean on different podcasts for knowledge.
Bro, that is education.
Well, but it's not the
That's
standard.
mentorship.
That's
not
mentor-
necessarily-
Mentorship,
That's,
that's
not
education.
necessarily education. Yes,
Yeah. That's education.
no.
Mentors
that's
are a
edu-
form of educators.
There's just not the standard form that you're going to get.
You
Yeah.
I
are
would
learning by
understand.
watching.
I understand you're learning, you're absorbing,
That's learning.
but that's not.
That's education.
We're being educated.
You are educated, becoming educated.
I still okay.
You're
According
losing
to
your
our
uneducatedness.
our society's view of education, that is not education.
Is
Are
a-
you moving
is a
the needle?
2-year, 4-year school.
Are you moving? Okay. I'm not even talking about formal education. I'm not talking about going and getting a 4-year degree. I thought we were past that topic. Scratch the school system, and that is a form of education. That's a very effective form of education.
That is okay. I'll agree with that.
Well, then yes, it's always important to increase your knowledge.
Oh my God, always.
Always.
But knowledge is not as good as wisdom.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge
my
is also
goodness,
evil.
Dusty.
Here's the truth that I think about knowledge. I think knowledge, like anything, can be abused.
Yes.
You know what's funny? Sorry, Mr. Viola got his PhD from Dallas Baptist University.
I just looked up that school, and it's not even accredited.
Even better.
I'm kidding. I just looked up that school in my mind, and it's not accredited.
He got his PhD from Dallas Baptist University.
What you're saying is he doesn't like
DBU?
Christian education, but he's got a PhD.
Exactly. He has an education, but he's speaking against it.
That's why I think it's such a joke.
So is
how do you do a book? You educate yourself to write the book. You educate yourself on topics.
I know he used George Barna to fact check it.
like
Who
you
is
educated
educated.
your mind on the Farg stream and what's typical.
Without even reading the book, but just knowing how my close friend Frankie, just knowing what he believes and stuff, he's not against being educated.
No, he's against the commercialized
system of it. He's
Right.
against having to have a degree
What
to
does
get
that
into
even mean?
ministry. Like
Make
having
it
to
all for
have a
money.
Bible degree to get into a church job, for
Right.
instance.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So he's okay with pastors pulling 15 different scriptures from 15 different books.
Well,
Uh,
you take that away, he's not even okay
gluing
with
them
paid
together.
pastors. He doesn't even like paid pastors. So
okay.
He's all about the
Okay,
house
that
church
makes a little
model.
bit more sense. If a pastor's not paid, then they're more like what was that woman that like everybody knows she was underpaid?
Woman at the Well?
No,
Or
she died like 15 years ago.
Oh, Mother Teresa.
Mother
Teresa,
Teresa.
like she's poor. This is her life choice. She probably spent a lot of time just seeking God in her, on her own spiritually, and she probably really has this deep knowledge or wisdom that none of us probably have in this country, even with degrees. So, like, if you take his perspective, he kind of stacks it well. I don't want him to be paid, and I don't want him to go get degrees. I want him to be unpaid, like a Mother Teresa, and gain that knowledge by just doing and being. I mean, it's cogent for himself.
Correct.
That's where I think, and we'll probably expand on it on another podcast as we wrap up the book, but like there's a lot of things, and I agree with a lot of things that he says not biblical or whatever, and so we see it right now, and there's just so much that we're doing wrong in a sense, or not doing biblically the way it's.
We're not doing it wrong, and it's not necessarily we're not doing it biblically. It's just we're not doing it how they did it in the first century.
Right, and there's
when Jesus walked.
And so then the question is, and I really have been struggling with, is when God created church, when God established the church, I guess is the better way of saying it, when he did that, what was his intentions? Was his intentions to be how it is now, or was his intentions to be the more family kind of atmosphere that you had, the loving one another atmosphere that you had on a daily basis in the Church of Acts, and not on a weekly casual basis that you have in church today?
Well, when you build the time machine and go back out there and ask him that question, then we'll know.
Well, I don't
Speaking
need
of
to
time
build
machine,
a time machine, just shoot.
Scientists did find proof of gravitational pull this week in black holes. So,
I love black holes.
Which is confirming Einstein's theory of space-time.
I think the pupil in the
continuum.
eye is very similar to a black hole. Tons of light go into it, but it's like black.
Like when I look in your eyes, I
Yeah,
just see darkness.
Yeah. So, like, one thing that really annoys me about Frank Viola is he's like, don't get educated, don't get paid, but he doesn't expound on where are you going to learn how to use the Bible properly. Because if you don't get under a mentor, like, he should have had a chapter in there saying, don't go to school, don't get paid. But the last chapter here is train under a mentor. Oh, okay, sure. You can talk about not training under someone that's got an American education. You can train under a nun or a priest, but not someone with an American degree. How are we going to do that in our country, Frank? How does this even apply in our country? That's not the reality of the current climate. You have to have a mentor. Most likely that mentor is going to have a degree somewhere. It's going to be an American education. How are you setting us up for success? How can we apply that in modern day America?
In Mr. Viola's defense, he does have like a final thoughts chapter and wrapping up, a chapter about wrapping up, and then all that. So he may allude to some of that in there, but also,
and he's also
Mr. Viola says this is not a standalone book. You have to read the other book in order to understand this,
which
book
is
as
smart.
Well.
Now we have to read 2 of his books.
I love that. He gets double money.
Right. Which I personally...
Is he getting paid? Or is he donating all that money?
No, he's getting royalties off of it.
Well, then what's he even talking about? That's just as good as getting money from a bucket.
But
well, his problem with the bucket was that we're told that we have to.
Right.
That's the difference.
He gives us an option to buy this book.
Yeah.
All right.
Boy, he's tricky.
He is. He's
like, I'm going to write it down and give you the option to buy it, versus a pastor who's going to speak it, and of course they're going to say you have to give, but my way's better.
So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I am going to read his next book just to see where he goes with it. We're not going to talk about it on this podcast, So if you guys want to know or expand
have the
upon
book.
what Mr. Well,
What's the
perfect.
book
I'll get it from you. Reimagining house or reimagining
the
church
or something.
or something. Like that.
Interesting. So he broke all these things down, and then he rebuilds it. I can
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yes,
I
he
can
does.
really appreciate that.
But he rebuilds it more into a house church model, and that's actually what his last chapter in this book is.
And he's not the only one that does that. I mean, there's like Francis Chan that he started a church. It grew to thousands of people, and he was like, "Wait, what is we doing? This is not right." And so he left that church and started a house church, more house church movement. That is where people are going today. Is back to the roots of the house church movement.
I think the modern church is more like a governmental program. It's like, it's not run by the government, but you know how the government has programs for different groups of people.
Yes.
The modern church is very similar to like that. They're like, it's great. It keeps people out of jail, keeps people from abusing alcohol, doing drugs. Like they got all these morals, and it's like a government program in this country. Now give your money.
Or God's gonna hate you.
Yeah, the next book in this.
You want to get out from underneath the cloud?
So he has two other books that go along with this. The next one is Reimagining Church, and then I believe the last one to this series is The Untold Story of the New Testament Church. I'm not sure.
That. But he's against education, but yet he's going to re-educate us on an interpretation of those times.
Not against education.
Against commercialized education.
He's against.
Dude, where did he get that?
He's
from
against
a commercialized
commercialized Christian education.
Dude, there's just like what's the word I'm looking for? There's contradictions built into this argument.
Oh yeah, they're
like majorly.
No doubt.
I'm against commercialized education.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up this week as Dusty does his lasso over there.
Yep, wrapping it up. Time to go home.
So we will leave off with this. If you want to, this is the last chapter we are doing in this book. Mm-hmm. We are going to do a wrap-up segment, or wrap-up.
We're going to wrap.
We're going to wrap, yes.
Wicka, wicka.
Even two white guys rapping. That's going to be messed up. All right, so we're going to wrap up this book either next week or the week after, whenever we can get our next guest on the show, because we have someone in mind that we want, and it's really it has to fit their schedule. So
they sound really important.
Yeah.
So it may be next week, it may not. You'll just have to tune in and find out.
Surprise.
All right, guys. Have a good week.
We'll see you.